cold ship is the condition under which the main propulsion plant, boilers and auxiliaries are not in operation due to the absence of power. In this condition, the ship is experiencing blackout. Blackout is the total loss of power in the system. The first thing we will do in this situation is to supply power to our ship. Shore supply is used in this scenario. After we've supplied electricity to our ship, we will now bunker the diesel oil tank and heavy fuel tank. We will now fill our diesel oil deep tank by opening the diesel oil intake valve. We have to fill up our heavy fuel oil deep tank as well. By opening these valves, we have to monitor the level of the tanks and make sure that it is kept up to 90% of its maximum capacity to make sure that it will not overflow. Once the diesel oil deep tank almost reaches 90%, we will close the diesel oil intake valve. As the heavy fuel oil deep tank reaches 90%, we will supply next the fuel oil tank in the starboard, center, and port. We will do the same thing for all the remaining tank. We will fill it up to 90%. Once we filled up all the tanks, we will now close all the inlet valves. After we've finished bunkering the diesel oil and heavy fuel oil tanks, we will now bunker the lubricating oil and cylinder oil. First, we will fill the main engine lube oil tank number 1 by opening its refilling valve and the lube oil intake valve. If it's almost full, we will open the refilling valve for main engine lube oil tank number 2 and close the refilling valve for tank number 1. We will do the same way in filling the diesel generator lube oil tank. Once it is almost full, we will now open the refilling valve for main engine cylinder oil tank. We will close first the lube oil intake valve and close next the refilling valve for the main engine cylinder tank. We will now fill our hot well tank and freshwater gravity tank. Monitor the tanks until it is almost full. Close the refilling valve for the freshwater gravity tank. Once it is almost full, close the refilling valve for the hot well tank. Now, we will fill the diesel generator start air receiver. We will open its refilling valve and start the emergency compressor. We will wait until the air pressure is 2.5 megapascal or higher. Once it reaches 2.5 megapascal or higher, we will now stop the emergency compressor. Now, we will supply our diesel oil service tank. We will open its refill valve and pump it manually. We will start first our diesel generator. We have to open the Kingston valve on the port side. And then open the diesel generator start air receiver main valve. After that, we will open the start air inlet valve and the fuel inlet valve. Then switch on the pre-lubricating pump and set the mode into manual. Start button should be pressed until the generator will start. We will now connect the diesel generator to bus bars. Then switch off the short connection. The start button for DG1 should be pressed. DGC water pump number 1 should be switched on and number 2 on standby. Auxiliary air valve should be open. And open the DG2 fuel inlet valve as well as the start air inlet valve. Set the DG2 preheating to auto, and pre-lubricating to auto. Set seawater pump number 1 at on and the number 2 at standby. And then open the air receiver refilling valve number 1 and 2. And set the start air compressor number 1 and 2 at auto. We will now fill the main engine sump by opening these valves. And monitor it until it is filled up to half of the lube oil. Once it reaches half, we will close the valves. Now we will fill our boiler hot well. Fill it until it is almost full. Stop the pump. We will now fill our auxiliary boiler by opening these valves and starting this pump. Once the level reaches normal range, we will close the pump. We will now open the auxiliary burner fuel inlet valve and switch the following to auto. And then open the auxiliary boiler main valve. We will now synchronize the diesel generator too. Start button should be pressed until the generator 2 starts. The selector should be set to DG2. Then press the automatic generator synchronization on button.
So let's take a look to our compressed air system, and we can see that we still don't have enough compressed air to actually start the engine. So let's go to the miscellaneous and turn on the steering gear pumps, and we will set it to remote operations so that the bridge can decide when to control the steering. So next is we will start pumping out the bilge by opening these bilge valves and set the separator mode to auto and start the bilge pumps. Next is we'll prime those pumps by opening this valve from seawater, then opening this valve from bilge manifold, then close the latter valve, and just do the same with the other valves to build up the pressure and open bilge pump discharge valves. And now you can see that the bilge water tank level is increasing. So next is open the bilge water separator oil gauge cleaning water valve, and as you can see, the oil collection tank level is increasing. And now we can start pumping fuel to HFO tank from the oil collection tank or from the separator. And to do that, must open the inlet valve and the fuel transfer pump valves and start the transfer pump. And as you can see, the level is dropping since it is being transferred to the HFO tank number 2. So for now, we must close these valves and shut off the transfer pump and open the sludge tank suction valve and start the sludge pump. Now the bridge requested us to go dead slow. Now turn off the sludge pump and check for parameters. Now I forgot to turn on the seawater pump 1 and put number 2 to standby, and do the same with freshwater pumps and turn the main engine freshwater heater and just acknowledge the alarm and check the parameters again if we're good to go. So now open the emergency stop air delivery valve, the control air delivery valve, and the main engine starting valve, the air valve, and the distributor valve. Now we're currently in dead slow, so next let's go to the main engine and open the indicator valve from 1 to 7 and turn the lubricator setting to higher. Next, set the auxiliary blower to auto and turn gear motor to ahead and pay attention to the RPM. And then stop the turn gear motor and let's go to the engine and gauge the turning gear. Now everything is ready. We have starting air, the lubrication. We have now set the control lever position to start and wait for about 40 RPM. When it reaches 40 RPM, set the control lever to 1.5 and when the ship or the engine first start, the ship start to shake, and when that happens, just bring your throttle up.
So now that we have the thing going, I'm going to close the valve covers, getting another warning mostly related to the bilge, some kind of what happens in this particular engine. And now we're moving dead slow and everything's fine. We're gonna go to the power plant real quick. Now we're getting a warning that we have reduced the voltage. What? The shaft generator. The shaft generator is the generator actually connected to the main shaft that's rotating right now, and at the moment it's not rotating quick enough that actually produce any real amount of anything, so we're just gonna hold tight until the bridge calls us and give us at least half. Another thing we could start playing right now is giving ahead and to set up the speed, as well as off going ahead and shutting off these two heaters because we don't need them anymore. Don't need this anymore. We generate our own heat. We don't need the lube oil heater as well. Now when you shut these two off, assuming the guy is going to want to be giving at a constant speed, I think our cap is giving to want to where to go ahead and bypass them by clicking this valve here. It's going over bypassing the preheater here because again it's already 50 degrees Celsius. So now what we have to do is wait for the engine to go. Oh, what's this? So the requested half. Half would be half torque, so that comes out to be about 5 on this. Normally you wouldn't go ahead and jam on it that hard. We could spend good 15 minutes to warm it up for good. Some things to watch out for now as our RPM starts to come up, our torque starts to come up. You notice the auxiliary blower lights out. That's just giving us a quick little heads up. Let's know that Oak Bridge has told us that it's off this. They're going to be using full navigation, so now it's going to be safe to bring up the shaft generator. Turbochargers are working. Now just a quick little kind of thing if you're interested. This is the scavenging. This is roughly our boost pressure for those who like racing cars. And what it's telling us at the moment is the fact that we're pushing about just 2 bars or 0.2 megapascals. This thing pushes enormous amounts, so for those of you who will like to do multiplication, just multiply this by 10 and then by 14.7 or 147 to get just how much this is right now, but I'm sorry, it doesn't make any sense. Either way, 1 single megapascal is 147 psi, so I guess you guys can figure it out. Back to the matter is pushing it pretty hard. So now that we got the thing going, we have two things we need to do. We need to engage the shaft generator. Oh, it's a little bit more because we're not quite half yet. We got to engage the shaft generator for electricity, and we need to go ahead and engage main steam system as well. So we're going to power plant, click on main switchboard, click on shaft generator, go ahead and turn on the stator, get it all kind of nice and warm up before we actually gauge electricity to it. Shaft generators is selected, then all I got to do is make some. It's auto, hold the on key. Now it's going to happen as you're seeing this little dot rotating, which represents phase. Once it gets up completely in phase like I just did there, it's going to go and come up. So now we're actually running off the shaft as well as these two generators. Don't need this much electricity generating, so I'm going to go to diesel generator 2, and I'm actually going to disengage it. So when you take a generator offline, you have to kind of gently take it offline, so that actually going to use that auto synchronizer again to pull it off, which is easy to auto synchronize off. So to power plant control panel, normally you let the diesel shut down and kind of gently cool off, but I'm a cheater, someone go ahead and stop. After doing that, I'm going to come down where it's a start mode, set that to automatic. I'm going to go ahead and stand by to see something bad happens, which you know with me almost always does. So this is a good time to go on steam system. Here, turn on our two circulating pumps. It actually starts circulating some of this water out into the exhaust funnel to heat up the back end heaters that we can save our steam. By the way, while we're here, we can always click this button to go ahead and flip to using the heavy fuel oil as our source of heat, as our source of fuel, which I say is safe for the boiler. It's kind of nice.
Now let's go back to the compressed air, where there is a good amount of compressed air throughout the rest of the ship. Now the bridge is going to call and will request full rating, which is around 19,000. But first, let's check that for a sec. So the specification states that it's 19,670 kilowatts. Next is push the handle there and make sure it does not reach 10 because it will trip and shut down. As the power slowly comes up, producing 140, a steam alarm will then occur due to the production of much heat, which tends to create an overpressure. But the system on board will handle it. Now we will create an emergency situation. But first, we'll need to check various parameters. Let's go to fuel. Let's go to cooling. Check the lubricating. And then the compressed air as what we checked a while ago. Then we'll start the emergency situation. The bridge will call for stop. This will trigger the engine to shut down immediately that sits rolling in a single diesel generator. After the engine is shut down, a lot of problems will appear. First is go to the power plant and set to manual and start that up. Go to the main switchboard, switch to diesel generator 2, and click on switch on the auto sync. Meanwhile, we'll start slowing the engine down. Next is to go to the steam diagram and close the steam connections, then acknowledge the alarms. Go to steam control panel and stop the circulation pump number 1 and number 2. Go to the power plant and check if there is power. Then take the shaft generator offline to prevent thousands of alarms once we click stop. And now we get an emergency stop like this. It usually indicates the need to stop or reverse the ship in a hurry. The bridge just called and announced that we need to go full astern. And now we need to start the ship in a hurry. Go to compressed air diagram and turn that valve. Go to the main engine and check if everything is good. Now turn on higher lubrication. Then click turning gear motor astern for a couple of rotations. Then shut it down and disengage. Go ahead and get started. Notice that the RPM will start to run forward for a second, then snaps and starts going backwards. There's the compressed air warning, as always, but just ignore that. Then gauge that up to 2. Now, they specifically requested full, so go ahead and push it all the way there. Go ahead and set the lubrication back to normal. There's no need to bring up the shaft generator, because once the ship is on a position where it's stopped, we're in pretty good shape. The 2 diesels are currently running, and we should be too concerned about the electricity. Then the bridge will call, and then we'll do is to stop. We will be stuck for a minute or so. Generally, you want to run around and get all the units that are required for heating engine and preparing to go. The bridge just called again and said they were done with the engine.
So okay, while we're at it, let's take a look at our ballast diagram. As you can see, our ship is out of trim at 1.9 meters too far to the back, which makes sense because it's over all our fuel surges. So the way we can solve that one is that we can actually force out seawater directly into one of these big ballast tanks. Pretty simple process. We simply open up the valves to the side that we want to flood. Let me go ahead and open those 2 valves, and it starts sliding. As well as you're going to notice, as we start adding seawater to the front of the ship, the trim of the ship is going to start. Going forward, if your ship is hilling at all, it simply need to use a dual more on the side that the other or didn't fill everything equally, what we did earlier. So let's go ahead and fill the sucker up real quick. And there, just much is what's going to hold. Then shut those we can shut the those 2 build pumps off. Naturally, we could fill this 2 slot as well as to try to balance it even more, but I'm not going to do that exact moment. What I'm going to do is to prepare the engine in case they need it again. It looks like the bridge is just called for standby, so chances are whatever is holding itself a minute ago isn't holding us up anymore. Still pretty hot, but I'm going to keep it warm just in case we needed a lube oil or how either goes back on the bypass gets her hot of getting warning for the power plant button. The power plant warning is getting an overload warning or diesel generator 1 and 2. That's why. Okay, so acknowledge that one. So there, right, power plant, if we're quite a bit and we're working very hard in actual emergency, we can always shut things off completely if you had to. So at this moment, our diesels are working pretty hard, so to kind of keep the rest of the ship going pretty well. So anyway, let's get things started. So at this point, I'm going to go to compress there and just get ahead and make sure the slow turning valve is open. I'm back to the main engine. We're just going to ask a slow head and let's get the engine started again. We got to make sure that we run over to our lubrication settings that back to normal. All we have to do is go ahead and engage our chain, drink up. Let's getting school warning, so let's find out what that's about. And plenty of fuel. There's anything usually hot. I think everything is good. Yeah, right. So we're going to go ahead and engage the turbo gear, give it a couple turns forward, make sure everything is working correctly. So pretty good to me. I'm going to go ahead and disengage it, and I'm going to go ahead and let's get it started one last time again. We want to wait until we get to about this little red dot here before we go standing the S. Otherwise we're going to the other issues. The pressure errors we're always have I go about 1.5 and have to let the skip kind of shake itself out real quick. Takes just a minute to do. Alright, good. Let me go ahead and cancel that system, shut off our heater as well as a bypass it, shut off for lubricating heat. Let's bypass it. Whoops. There we go. Now we're pretty good shape. So the bridge called this up and says whatever holding us up is now done. Go ahead, brings the ship up to a head full again. We're going to go ahead and bring the steam system back online and between the shaft generator back as well. As everybody's warming up, they look to insurance and cylinder hour temperature. for those system to be shaped, your temperature was there. Obviously it's going to be a little low, so you can start. And engine wise, careful with closing those two, by the way, it's because these are very grumpy and it tends to shut off. Basically, this is holding off fuel valve and air gets cut good. It shuts. Cool. So anyway, that's good. We're going back to the shaft generator. Shaft generator is like a shaft stayed for preview. It's already on. Then we're going to go ahead and asynchronous once more, and until this dot can complete about 12 o'clock here. Notice it's only going clockwise. We're going to go ahead and take a diesel generator one offline because we've already given the right to exercise. And it's all fine now. We can go over to the diesel generator itself. We can go ahead and off button, get this auto, and then to standby. So that the one now we are in great shape, consumers of the course. Throughout, stop all the lights on the ventilation comfortable. We're in good shape, and that we're producing right now. We're actually producing more than a rated. So that's not equipment is down. With some, but I think it's all just a little bit kind of planned with the throttle to kind of get it its setting where it's going to work exactly the way I wanted. And there. So I hope you enjoy this tutorial and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.